They share Roman Catholic upbringing, a reputation as boring, and the name Michael. With Hillary Clinton's health scares and the advanced age of both presidential candidates, it's possible that we'll see Tim Kaine or Mike Pence behind the Resolute desk sooner rather than later. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Well, men Timothy Michael Kaine and Michael Richard Pence have both spent their adult lives, most of it anyway, in elective office. They're both what Donald might otherwise call low-energy guys, with reputations for supporting their party lines. Pence leaning conservative. He endorsed Ted Cruz in the primary. And Kaine leaning progressive. He was the first major endorsement for Barack Obama in 2007. Well, since Trump and presidential rival Hillary Clinton are pushing 70 and Clinton's health has become a matter of public debate lately, we might wonder what life would be like under the presidential administrations of their running mates, or at least in some alternate campaign scenarios. Stephen Green. Indiana Governor Mike Pence caucused with the Tea Partiers when he was in Congress and won the straw poll among so-called values voters a few years ago. That's values voters. For some reason, that's difficult to say. Senator Tim Kaine seems like your average postmodern Democrat, and his tenure as DNC chair was at least less controversial than that of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So just for fun, what would happen if the VP candidates really determined the outcome of the presidential race?
Well, this is the one case where they should. You reminded me yesterday of one of the most delightful quotes in American political history, and I can't remember who said it, but it was early in the 19th century, I believe, who rated the vice presidency as not worth a bucket of warm spit. And that has been cleaned up for the history books that the children read. I
didn't know that.
Officially, that's true. The vice president has no official duties other than cast tie-breaking votes in the Senate. So it's really just a terrible, useless, pointless job. No, Joe Biden is not going to cure cancer before January 20. But in this case, we have two candidates. One belongs in jail. One who has no political experience ever. And as you said, they're both 70 or nearing 70. And so here is a race where the vice presidential picks matter like none other. And there's a little bit of history here, too, other than the previously mentioned bucket. And that is Woodrow Wilson, who, had a serious stroke in his last year of office. And his wife, Edith, essentially ran the country for that last year. She determined
That's right.
who got to see the president. She determined what issues came to his attention. For all we know, she was actually speaking for him. He was pretty much incommunicado, except through her. So decisions were essentially hers, I guess would be pretty fair to say. So what would happen, 25th Amendment aside, which I don't think any cabinet would actually invoke to remove a president, we might have a situation where you've got a Pence or a Kaine who is essentially behind the scenes running the country for an incapacitated president. These decisions matter, and instead you've got two, I don't want to say blank slate guys, but pretty white, white toast with mayo guys. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of excitement there when these guys really deserve a lot more scrutiny than they're getting.
Well, Bill Whittle, I know that you think that Hillary Clinton is much worse off than she's letting on. How would her running mate fare in a head-to-head against Donald Trump? And how would Pence do against Clinton? In other words, if right now one or the other of them had to drop out, how would the head of the ticket do against the second banana on the other ticket?
Well, as we've said before, Scotty, this is a really unusual year. And one of the things that makes it most unusual is because the primary candidates, the top of the ticket candidates, are respectively the most despised and the second most despised political candidates in American history. So on some weird sort of equation, the best chance to beat Trump is for Hillary to drop out, and the best chance to beat Hillary is for Trump to drop out.
I did a segment on this a couple of months ago.
It's absolutely true. It's just absolutely true. So if either one of the top of the ticket goes away, then their negatives go away, and I think that really helps the other party. Now, dealing with the two candidates we have here, I don't know anything about them, So I can say with confidence that I like Tim Pence very, very much, and I think Michael Caine's a communist.
Bill,
But he was great in Batman as well.
Yeah, Bill, go to Instapundit today and look for Kaine's history with actual Marxism in the Catholic Church going back to the 80s. This guy was a Stalinist.
Imagine my surprise. So let me just conclude by saying this. We know that Mike Pence is a pretty strong conservative by all accounts. I don't think anybody's going to put up a reasonable fight to say that Mike Pence is more conservative than Donald Trump is. And I think most Republicans would probably be happy about that, although needless to say, Donald Trump has his own core of very hardcore supporters. It would depend on the circumstances of his departure, obviously. Kaine, on the other hand, has a lot of negatives that I don't like about him, but all I wanted to say is this. I've seen Pence speaking by himself, and when Pence speaks, he looks like a governor or looks like the president. Tom Kaine, in the background with Hillary, looks like a soccer dad. He looks like the guy who's carrying the Gatorade. And he's like applauding at every single thing she says. He's the most nothing political candidate I've ever seen in terms of charisma. He's got negative charisma, and he just seems like the token nobody lapdog. He seems like the ideal vice president, right? But the problem is that the vice president is elected because he may be the president instantaneously. He's a heartbeat away from the presidency. Yeah. It's a great expression. So needless to say, not only in terms of politics, but in terms of character, I'd feel much more solid with Mr. Pence than I would with Mr. Kaine. Pence has a gravity about him. Kaine, as I say, taking my political bias out of it as much as I can, he looks a little too eager. He laughs at everything that she says, and he applauds every time she opens her mouth, and he looks like a lapdog to me.
Hey, Bill, you know how you make Hillary Clinton look good, don't you? Negative charisma right next to her.
That's why they were both chosen, right?
Neither balances of them the force.
Well, neither of them are particularly high-profile people. I mean, seriously, if you wanted to bring out the big guns and really get serious about winning, it seems pretty obvious that Trump's running mate should have been Ted Cruz, and Clinton's running mate should have been Bernie Sanders. Then you'd have all the cards on the table. Then you'd really have the whole country represented. But neither of them, for whatever reasons, I suspect in both cases it's a sense of narcissism and maybe a little bit insecurity. Neither of them went with a strong vice presidential candidate. Both of them went with really relative unknowns and very weak candidates. And just the final thing is that it's a shame that the vice presidency is considered a bucket of warm spit, because there are so many things that a good vice president could and should be doing during the administration, not the least of which is being groomed to be president. If I was president, I'd get the best vice president I have. They said that there's that old business saw, right, that says A-level talent hires A-level talent, and B-level talent hires C-level talent. And a person who's confident puts the best people around them, and they don't worry about the spotlight being stolen from them because they know that however good the vice president is just makes them look better.
No, in many ways, Mike Pence, Donald Trump choosing Mike Pence was the first indication, I think, that we've seen, perhaps the only indication we've seen, that Trump is what they say he is, which is a great leader who surrounds himself with excellent people. Because other than the Pence pick, most of the people that have been around him have been hacks, with the exception of his own children. So, I actually give him a lot of credit for the Mike Pence pick. I happened to be at that Values Voters Summit, I believe, when the straw poll picked Pence as the guy that they all wanted to be the presidential candidate. And I was actually sitting down for a radio interview. I believe it was with AFR, American Family Radio. And all of a sudden, Mike Pence walked by, and they called him over, and they sat him down at the table. So I was right across the table from Mike Pence, and somehow, at that point, Scott Ott was not the most interesting thing in the world. So I just sat there with headphones on and a microphone in front of me, as if I were on the radio with Mike Pence. When in fact, I think they had muted the mic at that point.
Did you like him?
Yeah. Yes, I did. And he comes across as a very genuine guy. Obviously, he was saying the things that a lot of the folks at that conference wanted to hear. If you look at his track record, I mean, much of his track record is boilerplate Republican voting with my party kind of stuff. But he also, he stood up against TARP. He stood up against cash for clunkers. He stood up against the stimulus bill. He stood up for life in many situations to his detriment. And so, he's got an impressive track record. And the fact that he endorsed Ted Cruz speaks well of him. So anyway, I applaud Donald Trump for that pick. If I were either one of the campaign managers, on either side of this, I think I'd put a lot more emphasis on the running mates. Trump could frankly use the patina of sanity and of actual Republican principles that Mike Pence brings to the table, and Clinton could use a longer break from the campaign trail to recuperate, and some focus on Tim Kaine, who is much less interesting than she is. In fact, he actually released all of his gubernatorial emails to the public. So, in reality, neither vice presidential candidate will make a difference in the race unless one of the headliners gets sidelined. But they can offer, let's call it a spoonful of cornstarch to help the bile go down. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.